Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In the previous episode, we witnessed a major turning point in the journey of Tien and Jack. After everything they had been through together, holding hands, moving forward step by step with hope, when Tien became pregnant through IVF, a journey that was not only physical but also deeply emotional, filled with worries and silent waiting, happiness felt so close, as if just a little more and they could finally reach it. But then, it suddenly slipped away in a way neither of them could have ever prepared for. The pain came suddenly. Without any warning. Without any time to understand what was happening. And then, the moment they arrived at the hospital, what they received was not the good news they had hoped for, but a truth too painful to accept. Tien could not keep the baby. Even though the doctor gently explained that it was the body's natural response, that it was not her fault, that this was something that sometimes cannot be avoided in journeys like this, for Tien, those explanations were not enough to ease the pain slowly rising inside her. Because some pain does not come from reasons. It comes from emotions. It is the feeling of losing something you once placed so much hope in. It is the emptiness that appears right after hope has just been lit. And that emptiness is what makes it so hard for a person to face. After leaving the hospital, nothing returned to the way it was before. There was no clear line between before and after. But everyone could feel it. That everything had changed. The house was still the same. The same familiar walls. The same belongings that had always been there. The same space that once was filled with laughter, small conversations, and ordinary moments that carried so much warmth. And yet, the atmosphere had changed. A lingering silence. No longer the gentle, comforting silence as before, but a heavy stillness, as if every sound was being held back somewhere, unable to be spoken. Tien returned home, stepping through the familiar doorway. But her steps were no longer light. No longer the feeling of coming home after a long day, looking forward to rest. Instead, it was a feeling difficult to name. Familiar. Yet distant. She looked around. Everything was still there. Nothing had changed in appearance. Nothing was out of place. But inside her, there was a strange emptiness. Not a fleeting emptiness, but one that stretched on, quietly spreading through every thought, every emotion. As if a part of her had silently disappeared. The first days passed very slowly. So slowly that each day felt longer than usual. Tien barely spoke. Not because she had nothing to say, but because she didn't know where to begin. She didn't know how to express what she was feeling. She didn't know how to face the questions within her own heart. The familiar conversations were gone. The small daily stories she used to share disappeared. The moments where she would start a conversation, create warmth in her home. All of it seemed to have faded into the background. She just sat there quietly. Sometimes on a chair. Sometimes by the window. Sometimes in a familiar corner of the house. But wherever she was, her state remained the same. Her gaze was distant. Not focused on anything in particular. Not directed toward any clear point. As if she was looking far away. To a place even she didn't know. There were moments when her eyes seemed to stop for a long time. But if you looked closer, she wasn't really looking at anything. It was as if she was lost in her own thoughts. Thoughts without words. Memories not yet named. Emotions not yet released. And all of those things quietly kept her within her own world. A world that no one could step into. And no one truly knew what she was facing deep inside. Jack saw everything. Not just what appeared on the surface, but also the smallest, quietest changes. The ones that slowly crept into their lives day by day. He noticed that Tutien's eyes were no longer the same. He noticed how she stayed silent longer. He noticed the moments when she sat still, with no reaction to anything around her. But he didn't press her with questions. He didn't ask things that forced her to answer. He didn't make her speak when she wasn't ready. He understood that some pain cannot be eased with words right away. And some silences need to be respected rather than broken. So he simply stayed by her side, quietly but consistently, like a support she could lean on at any time, whether she said it out loud or not. In the mornings, he woke up earlier than before. No alarm, no reminders, just a habit formed from worry. He went down to the kitchen, prepared simple meals. Nothing too elaborate, but warm enough. Enough that if she could eat just a little, it would be something. He carefully set everything on the table, looked at it once more, then called her. Gently. Not in a rush. Not forcing. But Tien barely touched the food. She sat there, looking at the table. But her eyes didn't settle on any dish. Not because she didn't like them, but because she no longer felt the desire to eat. Just eat a little, okay? Jack said softly. His voice was so gentle, as if even a little louder might tire her out. Tien just shook her head. Slowly. Not firmly, but enough to understand that she couldn't. I'm not hungry. A short answer, but it carried so much behind it. Not hunger in the usual sense, but the feeling inside her seemed to have no space left for any need at all. Day after day, the meals were still prepared, still placed neatly on the table, still made with the same care as before. But they remained untouched, just as they were when first served. No change. No sign that she had eaten. The bowl stayed full. The chopsticks remained still. And the distance between prepared and untouched kept repeating. Day after day, she began to lose weight. Not something obvious in a single day, but noticeable over time. Her face slowly lost its fullness. Her cheeks no longer held their natural glow. Her complexion turned pale, lacking vitality, as if her energy was slowly draining away. Her eyes changed too. No longer the kind that once knew how to smile. No longer reflecting the emotions of the person in front of her. Instead, they became distant, faded, as if covered by a thin layer of mist, impossible to see through. At night, when everything grew quieter, when the sounds of the day faded away, that was when her silence became the most apparent. She couldn't sleep. Not that she tried and failed, but rather, she barely entered sleep at all. Sometimes Jack would wake up in the middle of the night. Not because of any noise. Just a feeling. He turned to the side. But she wasn't there. An empty space beside him. Cold. He got up. Quietly. And then he saw her. sitting silently by the window. In the dark. No lights. No sound. She just sat there. As if she had been there for a long time. Not crying. Not speaking. No clear expression of emotion. Just silence. A silence that stretched on. Unbroken. Endless. And that silence felt heavier than any tears. Because when someone is still crying, it means they are still releasing something. But when they no longer cry, no longer speak, that is when everything is being held inside. Jack stepped closer. Each step soft, as if afraid to disturb her quiet. He didn't speak right away. Just stood there for a moment. Then gently placed a jacket over her shoulders. A small "It's my fault." That sentence appeared, then returned. Again and again. Like a circle with no ending. If only I had been more careful. If only I had done things differently. If only. Those if onlys were no longer just thoughts. They became a spiral. A spiral pulling her deeper. Trapping her in assumptions that weren't real. In things that could never be changed. And the more she thought, the harder it became to escape. And so, day after day passed. Everything outside continued as normal. But inside Tien was a completely different world. A world where she was slowly losing herself. And then, one afternoon, there was nothing particularly different from the days before. No sign that anything was about to happen. Everything continued in the same quiet stillness that had filled the house over the past days. Jack stood by the door, looking at Tien a little longer than usual. As if he wanted to make sure she was okay, even though he himself understood that okay at this moment was something very fragile. He stepped out for a while, just to buy some medicine, and a bit of food. Simple things. But they were all he could do right now. Before leaving, he turned back again, looked at her, and said, "Stay home and rest, I'll be back soon." His voice was still gentle. Not rushed. Not hurried. But beneath it was a worry he didn't say out loud. The door closed. A small sound, but enough to mark a space. The house fell silent. No footsteps. No small sounds of daily life. Only a stillness so deep that even the slightest movement could be felt. Tien sat alone, without changing her posture, without any clear action. Just sitting there and listening. Not to anything specific, but to the silence itself. A dense silence, so thick that she could hear every breath of her own. Each breath, slow, heavy, as if carrying something unnamed. She looked around. Every corner of the house, every familiar detail, everything was still there. Unchanged. Nothing lost. And yet, it all felt unfamiliar. As if she was standing in a place that no longer belonged to her. Her gaze stopped at a small corner of the room. A very small corner, but one that held so much. A place where she once kept little things that she had prepared, one by one, piece by piece, in the days when she still had hope, still waited, still imagined a future. Now, there was nothing left there. Not that the objects had disappeared, But their meaning was gone. All that remained was emptiness. A void that could not be filled. A choking feeling. Not bursting into sound. Not breaking into tears immediately. But slowly rising. Stuck somewhere in her chest. Making it hard to breathe. Making her not know what to do with her own emotions. She stood up. Slowly. Very slowly. No rush. No visible hesitation. Each step felt as if it had already been decided. Not in a single moment, but as the result of many long days of thinking. Days when she was trapped inside her own what-ifs. As if she had thought about this for a long time. Only now, she finally stood up. To move forward. The space around her remained silent. Nothing stopped her. Nothing changed. Everything stood still. But at that very moment, the door suddenly opened. A sharp sound breaking through the silence. Jack came back. Earlier than expected. No clear reason. Just a feeling that wouldn't let him be at ease. He froze. The moment he saw Tien. Not because of a specific action, but because of her state. Something was very different. Her eyes were no longer the ones he knew. Not just sadness. Not just the familiar silence of the past days. But something deeper. A void that made him immediately realize he could not leave her alone anymore. A sense of unease rose. Clear. Strong. No need to think. Tien. He called. His voice wasn't loud, but urgent. Without waiting for her reaction. Without waiting for her to look back. He stepped forward immediately. Fast. And held her tightly. As if 1 second too late, he would lose something. What are you doing? His voice trembled. Not from loud fear, but from something real. Very close. Tien said nothing. Didn't resist. Didn't explain. Just, in that moment, everything inside her broke. She burst into tears. No longer holding back. No longer keeping it in silence. For the first time, after so many days, tears fell. Endlessly. Uncontrollably. She sobbed. As if everything she had been holding in, little by little, could no longer stay inside. I'm so tired. Her voice broke. Weak. I can't take it anymore. No longer just thoughts in her head, but words finally spoken. For the first time. Clearly. Jack pulled her into his arms. Without hesitation. Without delay. As if that was the only thing he needed to do. I'm here. His voice was low. Steady. You're not alone. No blame. No why. No panic. Only presence. A presence strong enough. Patient enough. For her to lean on. At her weakest moment. After that moment. Everything didn't change immediately. There was no miracle. No sudden transformation overnight. But something was different. Jack didn't leave her side. Not out of force. But because he knew. She needed him there. More. Closer. He spent more time at home. Stayed with her more. Didn't leave her alone for too long. Didn't let the silence grow too deep. He gently took her out for walks. Not crowded places. Not noisy spaces. Just quiet areas. So she wouldn't feel pressured. He didn't talk too much. Didn't try to force conversations. Just breathed with her. Sat with her. Stayed in simple moments. But together. Little by little. Without rushing. Without forcing. Tien began to change. Very slightly. But truly. She was no longer completely silent. Not always speaking. But sometimes she answered Jack. Even if only with very short words. Very softly. But it was a sign that she was still connected. She began to eat a little again. Not much. Not regularly. But no longer completely refusing. Each time like that was a very small step. But enough to keep going. One morning, soft light filled the room. Not too bright. But enough to feel. Jack handed her a glass of water. Like every other day. Nothing special. But this time, she took it. Without hesitation. Without delay. She looked at him. A little longer. Her eyes were still tired. But not completely empty like before. Then she softly said, "I will try." A very small sentence. Barely audible. But to Jack, it wasn't just words. Little by little, Jack was still there. Never leaving. Not a single day did he choose to walk away. Not a single moment did he let her face it alone. He didn't try to change her overnight. Didn't force her to become who she used to be. Didn't place expectations she wasn't ready to meet. He simply stayed. With all his patience. With silence at the right moments. With small but consistent actions. Like a steady presence. That didn't need many words. But was always real. Perhaps that patience wasn't something grand. Wasn't made of beautiful words. But of days spent together. Without leaving. Without changing. Without giving up. And that was what brought Tien back. Not back to who she was before. But back to herself. In a different version. A version that had experienced loss. That had understood pain. But still chose to keep going. Even if slowly. Even if it was hard. But without stopping. And yet, there are wounds that cannot heal overnight. There are emotions that cannot disappear after just a few days. What Tien was doing was not forgetting, but learning how to live with it. And that would take time. A lot of time. So, have the wounds in her heart truly healed yet? Or are they still there? Just no longer as visible as before? And the journey ahead? Will it remain peaceful? Or will there be more challenges? Quietly waiting? No one can know for sure. No one can be certain. But one thing is clear. They are still moving forward together. Step by step. Slowly. But without letting go. And all of this will continue to unfold in the chapters ahead. If you've made it this far, don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel to follow along with the next episodes. See you all in the next video.
Xin chào mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Nay mình tiếp tục đưa đến với mọi người video của Tự Tiên và Giáp như mọi người. Như hôm qua thì mọi người cũng đã xem ở tập trước thì Tự Tiên và Giáp thì ở trong tập trước thì cả hai đã làm IVF để có thể có con. Tuy nhiên thì do cơ thể của Tự Tiên không thích ứng được nên là đã đào thải cái bào thai đó ra, khiến cho không thể mang thai được. Vậy thì liệu diễn biến tiếp theo sẽ ra sao? Hãy đón xem những tập tiếp theo nhé. Và trong tập này thì mọi người cũng có thấy là Tự Tiên bị giống như trầm cảm sau sinh á mọi người. Thì liệu mọi chuyện tiếp theo sẽ như thế nào? Hãy đón xem những video sau nhé mọi người. Mình đang đặt tên video với lại tạo ảnh thu nữa. Tạm biệt mọi người.